What does it take to design products that delight customers while hitting profit targets? We're examining design leadership and product strategy with someone who's mastered both. And if you've ever struggled to balance creative vision with commercial reality, or wondered how to scale design across global teams, this episode will give you frameworks that you can use immediately. Matt Carr is our guest. He is the VP of Design at Umbra, the Canadian-based company that designs products for every room of your home. He's spent 25 years at Umbra, from junior designer now to leading their global design operations. He's created products that have been featured in the New York Times, Surface Magazine, and MedHome. More importantly, he's built systems for balancing business and imagination that keeps Umbra at the front of innovation. If you're listening to our discussion and want to see the video version, which might be helpful because I have a feeling we're going to talk about some of the products and he might be able to show them to us, you can go to our YouTube channel, simply search for Product Mastery Now on YouTube. Let's jump in and learn about product design right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Chad. Happy to share many exciting things about Umbra and just design in general.
I'm looking forward to it. My background is primarily software products, and a lot of people listening are in the software space or maybe even service space. But a lot of people are building physical products. And what I found interesting throughout my career when I was more involved as a product manager in developing products, I got lots of insights from people I would talk to in industries that were building physical products. And for some reason, that just clicked in my brain better. People that would talk about things they struggled through and how they figured out what the customer really wanted, and like, oh, I can use that in the work that I do. So the podcast is certainly for people in all elements of creating something new, something of value for customers. First, I do want to just get an understanding for people that might not be familiar with the Umbra brand. What types of products do you design?
Well, we do touch on products really all over the home. The company is celebrating its 45th anniversary this year, which is pretty exciting for a Canadian company that has gone global. And we started off with a window shade. That was the first product that the co-founders created, Paul Rowan and Les Mandelbaum. And this window shade was something that they saw a need for. Paul actually was looking for something a little bit more interesting than just your typical shade. So we thought about how about applying a graphic to it, right? It sounds simple now, but everything sounds simple right. In retrospect. So he applied this graphic, and Les Mandelbaum, which was more the business side of the relationship, they brought this to a really small production. And they got some feedback. They made some early relationships with retail. And then from there, it's really grown from category to category to category, with first really thinking about what can be made locally, what can get the hands on, from a vinyl coaster, for example, that turned into a clock. So it was quite organic in how it grew into a multi-category company. And then, of course, there's some success that happens in certain categories, and those will expand faster than other categories, and some categories will drop off, right, due to consumer trends or manufacturing or other things. So we really try and touch on products that can be used by multiple regions in the world. We try and touch on products that really deliver what our core values are, right? And those core values are it must be modern, it must be original, it should be casual in its sensibility and similar to the people who kind of use it. Price is super important to us, so it must be accessible, and it has to be functional. So those 5 ingredients are really what create the product DNA in a way. And then once we have that, we can insert it into multiple categories or multiple spots in the home that we think it's appropriate for.
Okay. I know the website talks about, as I said in the intro, products for every room in your home. So that helps. How do you think about the product portfolio, especially as a global company now? You said you do try to design products that work in multiple regions, but I always like getting insights into the product portfolio. It's something that a lot of product managers themselves don't have to encounter often, but they should be understanding the product portfolio to know how their recommendations are going to fit into that. I think that's really important to them. I don't know if you think about this by region, maybe by room, by material, by how do you think of those categories of products you're creating?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can slice it, but we really have a global approach to it. And having such a close relationship between the design studio, which is integrated into the building, the culture, like it's almost in the building here is the really the center, the heart of the building. And the visibility of the design culture here with marketing, with sales, with operations, with the warehouse, like everything is attached. Like things are so close together. So the collaboration really early in the process is it really sets like it allows us to see how many hurdles we can cross, and if it crosses the finish line, then yeah, we have a global product. But if it breaks down before then, maybe it is not going to be successful in Europe or in Asia. Well, then maybe we won't be able to produce the minimum orders for the product or something like this, right? So we try and find products that really speak to our global consumer, and it's very hard to do that. And obviously, some areas will be more likely to grab onto a certain type of product versus others. But it's really important for us in scalability, even for brand visibility, to have these products that can sit with our typical consumer, whether that consumer in Tokyo or in Sao Paulo or in New York. Like there is an Umbra consumer, and they share a lot of the same values, right? So we're trying to like connect those consumers together and create product that actually speaks to those three consumers in those three cities, for example, right? So
Okay.
yeah, and I think like through experience as well of what's failed and what has been successful, we have a gauge in a way of what types of products or what types of materials or what types of consumers are available to make sure that we can actually make this product profitable and successful.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure that history informs a lot of lessons over the years, right? And what has worked and
Yes.
what hasn't.
Yes, lessons, also known as poor performing products or dogs. We've had a few, but you do have to
Everyone
make
does.
sure there's learnings, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. That when we're doing something new, there's lots of learning involved, and that's what makes this exciting too. On that, the portfolio aspect, how do you think about? I'm not sure where this question will go, so go anywhere you want to, however you want to address it from a design perspective. But how do you think about what actually gets prioritized? So it sounds like the design studio is a hub here that is really cross-functional, interconnects a lot of pieces. But at any given time, are you thinking about, well, we need a product for the bathroom. We need a product for this particular type of consumer. We haven't gotten into this metal yet. This is an opportunity that people are finding interesting. Let's do something with this metal. What are you thinking through about what to do next in terms of prioritizing the options you have in front of you?
we would consider those like different types of buckets in a way.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, there's a maintenance bucket, right? So, the maintenance bucket would be a category much like photo frames, where Umbra's had a name in the game for decades, and we will in the future as well. The category has had some ebb and flows throughout the decades, but we will always have photo frames in our assortment. It's important that we're always kind of thinking about these items, designing into them, and then within there, yeah, maybe there's wall display that's a little bit more popular right now, or maybe wood frames is happening right now versus metal, for example. Like there's all these little twists and turns down the journey, but that category needs maintenance. Right? And there's categories that we've owned from the start. For example, window hardware. So your curtain rods. Umbra was the first one in the business to actually take that from an expensive custom business. We were the first ones to actually make that cash and carry in a box. Right. So that's important to create new categories, but just as important, you create something, people are going to come after you. Right. It's important that we defend it as well
Sure.
with newness and innovation. Even like this week, we're talking about 3 new innovative ideas for the same category, right? So to start and defend is really important for that maintenance bucket. And then we always leave a bucket for, we call them blue sky ideas, right? So whether that comes from a new designer that I'm meeting when I'm traveling, whether that comes from a new manufacturing process or material, it can be so many different areas of innovation, and we will never close that down, right? That always has to be an open door. And obviously, there's going to be a little bit more risk with that bucket as well, right? So we have to manage risk accordingly, manage expectations accordingly. If it's a heavy tooled item, do you want to take that risk? Or if it's a fabricated item that has lower minimum orders, maybe you're a little bit more flexible with that, right? So those all come into discussions, or the qualifiers, if you may, to manage the potential risk or the potential success, right? You never know.
You don't. And the
Yeah,
business environment's always changing. There's new opportunities that you encounter. So that blue sky bucket is pretty important to
it's
have a way of acting on opportunities.
yeah, and our blue sky feeds our maintenance, right? So
Mhm.
like the things that were hits in maintenance are most of the time a product of something that started in blue sky. And even from the maintenance bucket, there's another bucket which is more about, let's say, more like derivative based, right? So we have
Mhm.
something that's happening, it's connecting with our audience. Okay, how do we leverage that success, whether it's different sizes of an item or working out the family? So cross category, it goes from kitchen to bath, for example, but we know our customer is resonating with a certain type of material, right? Like this photo frame, for example. This is the Bellwood photo frame done in bent wood. So actually, maybe we'll talk about this for a second. So this is a wooden frame. There have been approximately 1 million wooden frames designed in the history in the last like 4 decades or 5 decades. So how do you do something new in a category that's saturated? And saturation means that there's many like items out there. And it
Mhm.
also means that the price is super competitive, right? And the customer doesn't really want to pay more unless there's a value add, unless there's either design or a function or something that really resonates with the customer. So each year it gets a little bit more challenging to create these types of items. So this is the Bellwood frame. And this is not the first item that we did in the Bellwood collection. The first one was an umbrella stand that had this bent wood aspect to it. And then we got into some furniture. We've done a whole bunch of different items for Bellwood, which is like this bent wood technique. And then we needed to maintain the photo display business, and wood frames was a topic of discussion. So, how do we do that in a way that can resonate with the customer, still actually increase the visibility of our brand in retail? Because the consumer, the brick and mortar retailer that is already picking up, let's say, the storage bin or the umbrella stand, is likely to pick this up too if it's been
Right.
resonating, right? So we come up with the form and the technology to actually like create this frame, but
And what
that's
is
not it.
unique about this, and just for people that can't see it, so this appears to be a square picture frame that has rounded corners because it's one continuous piece of wood. Is that right?
That's right.
That's formed
That's
together.
right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you
Yep. Bent ply. So it
hmm
does have these radiuses around all the corners, which is we feel like more of a modern take on a
hmm
traditional
yeah,
four-sided
very clean
fabricated frame.
lines.
And then what's really special about our frames is like a few years ago we realized that the frames they had a traditional easel, like a kickstand on a bike, if you will, at the back, right? So they had a front side and then they had a back side. And the
hmm
back side was ugly. It was just a typical kickstand that you never want to look at. So now we're trying to create frames that are freestanding. So not only does this have a more of a contemporary look, but it's also freestanding in both
hmm
its portrait, so when the photo is tall, or in landscape, when the photo is sideways, right? And then on top of that, we actually have it to be double sided, right? So when this is sitting on your desk, or let's say if it was in behind your sofa, for example, it doesn't really have a bad backside when you're walking around it, or if it's you want to pivot it for a different audience or move it around or pass it to somebody. It's a 3D sculpture now. So
Right.
we've changed how, and it's a photo frame. It's a very simple object, right? But we've changed how like people perceive an object most of the time just as a 2D item to more of a three-dimensional piece of little sculpture. And you can pivot the internal glass. This is actually how you get the photo out. You pull this out. You pull the glass out of this pivoting thing. So the pivoting actually creates an angle if you want to display your photo on an angle. And also it creates the angle. So this can bypass the perimeter, the wooden perimeter that we talked about. So it's on an angle now that allows you to pull it out of the channel,
Right.
right? And put it
Yeah.
back in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What a fun idea, right? I could envision this being a very convenient before and after type. Like on the front, I have a photo of my wife and I's wedding, and on the back, our anniversary many years later.
Yeah.
Maybe we can use that as an example of your design process, right? Like even coming up with that. I'll let you walk us through our process instead of me kind of guessing at it.
Yeah.
Where did that start in terms of the insight? Like we realized that this is a maintenance area. Frames are important to us. We need something new here. How does this get started, and how do you walk through leading to an actual frame?
Well, we have a great history of making frames. So we really do have a lot of experience with what has worked in the past and what has not, and also really understanding price point. Like we would work very closely with our vendors. We know what is going to be within a certain price range from the factory, and we know what price point our consumer will pay for this. Some ideas that are new, maybe they can actually command a price point higher, right? Or two price point higher. But depending on, we like to call it like the elasticity of the category, like a wooden photo frame that holds a 4x6 image does not have a lot of elasticity to it, right? A new tech idea, which is totally new to the market, probably has a lot of elasticity because there's nothing to reference it from, right? So that's really important to play with, because when we're talking about materials, even thicknesses, like how wide that thing is, it needs to sit sturdy enough, but it can't be too wide to add cost because the consumer is not going to pay for it. All these things go into the navigation with our product development team, and learning where to make the sacrifices and not make the sacrifices, right? So it's the most important thing to us is design and the brand, and it's very important that from first sketch to final production, that brand is not sacrificed through any of the processes, right? So we sit down as a group and we identify this topic of photo display, and we have an internal crew, a design house here in Toronto, and we also work with external designers all over the world as well, who are collaborators, which is great to get like outside ideas. And we talked about the global aspect of Umbra, right? It's also very important that we work with designers from Asia, from Europe, from South America to get their perspective on design on a wooden photo frame and see if it connects with us, or maybe they're actually identifying that something is happening in Europe that we're not aware of.
Right.
So we spend several weeks, depending on the project, just trying to distill down ideas of what could connect. Sometimes it happens very quickly. Sometimes it doesn't happen. We try and narrow it down to where we think we have a pretty good idea of what could be something important for the collection. And that's when this internal collaboration really happens, is that we meet as a pretty tight group from different departments, and it's a very open feedback session. So all the risks are put on the table, and maybe we can design around them. Maybe we can't. Maybe the idea is trash. Maybe the idea is gold from the beginning. But that's sort of how we work, and then we continue down the road of design development, right? So working through some of the objectives of the product, working with the manufacturing, learning what's doable, what's not, what has to change, what doesn't have to change. Yeah, and then just bringing the stakeholders in each department along as we go through the design journey. They kind of understand, like once they get to a point where it's time to sell a product, they are very in tune with the process and the vernacular of what we're talking about, like why we did the project, who we're trying to do this for, the price point, like all these things are baked into the conversation. So the sales team, they're just not selling like the final item, like they really have a history of the development, which gives them a lot of design context and a lot of valuable information to share with their customer. And it's very authentic, and that always helps that process of selling, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So very cross-functional, getting all the parts of the organization involved in the design of the new product. That sounds like led by that core design team initially, but involving manufacturing and marketing and sales along the way. Yeah. My experience with creating something new with innovation is largely consumer driven. It's not the only way innovation occurs, right? Like when Snapple was one of my favorite beverages to consume, they would internally just come up with new flavors. If they liked them, they would push them out to the market, see how the market responded. And if they didn't respond well, they would discount them and move on, right? How does the consumer show up in this kind of process? And maybe it's just because of the years of experience, but how do you have them in this work as well?
It is changing gradually from, well, first of all, I should say that a lot of the people that work at Umbra, most of them, if not all of them, are technically Umbra consumers. Right? Like in going through design school, you're told, oh, you're never going to design for yourself, this and that. But here I am, like designing things that I would put in my own home. You know what I mean? So a lot of our designers and our marketing team, our sales team, we're actually Umbra consumers and users, right? So already you have something baked in where if everybody's curating items for their own homes and they are like the muse of an Umbra customer, that's a head start,
Right.
right? And working with some really close retailers, that helps as well. But it's changing in a way where we can get a response faster with the change of from brick and mortar to e-com, right? So, I mean, previously you put a product out to market, it goes to brick and mortar, you get some feedback from the retailer. Maybe that retailer is very responsive and they order another one right away, or maybe they're not. Maybe they only set their orders once every 4 months, so you don't get any feedback. But now with e-com and direct to consumer, we're getting feedback very quickly, right? It's on umbra.com. There's nothing to get in the way with the feedback from the end consumer, right? Or when we put something out on social, whether it's TikTok or Instagram, there's nothing getting in the way of like a very, very rapid conversation and feedback, whether it's on or off, right? So we've been able to speed up some product development based on some of those activities between like the end consumer, whether it's adding like a new form or adding a new color or a bigger size or more of a certain item. That's really accelerated with like this relationship between Umbra and the end consumer.
Yeah, more opportunities to get feedback and collaborate on concepts. That picture frame that you showed us or anything else you develop, I don't imagine the design studio where you guys sit down, maybe you sketch up what this looks like and all of a sudden it's this beautiful thing, that there's steps in there and probably prototypes that you go through. But tell us about that kind of, what do you do for like a prototyping approach to end up with the final product?
Yeah, it's critical to a product that is physical and it has to be functional. And also there has to be like a value to it as well, right? So, you know, the frame, it has to feel good. It has to have the right weight. There's a Wavy jewelry organizer, which I'll show you right now. So this is a set of two, but it is a ring holder. It's done in die cast metal, which is chrome plated, and it nests on top of each other. So it has all these different types of cavity on either side of each form, right? So this is a tooled item. It's expensive to do the tool. There's a lot of iterations of size of this. This item came through. We had some smaller ring holders that people would use, maybe perhaps like near the sink to put a ring on or something like this while they're washing their hands. And that same type of consumer didn't really want a huge jewelry box. They wanted something like something in between, something that they could buy themselves and something that would also like really nice to gift as well, right? So those were some of the key points of why we made this product. So this just doesn't come out like this. Like we did several versions of, we have a cardboard cutter here, very kind of primitive, but it gives us a quick idea of scale. Even with our CAD, we can, how many lines do we need? Like how many ring holders do we think, how many rings do we think this needs to hold? What is the depth that we need here? So when these stack, it creates enough space to still hold a watch, for example, that can be concealed. The nice thing about this one is that you can actually like leave it open, or you can actually flip it and they stay in here with pressure. So you can actually conceal it as well. So you want to make it dust free, then you can just flip it, right? So so we go through we go through a very primitive, like kind of like a 7-year-old prototyping stage.
Cardboard and hot glue is brilliant.
It's fast, but everybody here has the context. Like, don't show me a shiny rendering. I want to see a really basic sketch, because if the basic sketch can communicate the core idea, then marvelous. We can apply many different materials and all sorts of things, right? But if the core idea is not portrayed in a simple sketch, then you're going to rely on these like outside forces to try and make it better.
Right.
So we really want the core idea to sell itself. And that's kind of like the product has an elevator pitch. So, for example, I could explain this Wavy jewelry holder. Okay, it holds 14 rings. It can conceal your rings when you don't want it to be shown. Not only does it hold rings, but it also holds your watch. It's super giftable and can sit in your bedroom, on your vanity. So many different types of areas that it can be used, right? So this is the next stage of the cardboard mock-up, which we go into 3D print.
Okay.
Right. So this is nailing down the geometry, what it could look like in tooling, and trying to you see how rough this is, like, right? The pads on it's not necessary that this stuff is to be perfect, but we're already starting to think about where is the brand placement going to go on this? How does the consumer interact with the product? Is it nice to hold? Is it going to slip off too easily? How many can the consumer stack up? All these different items, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of changes that have happened to this. Costing, is this wall, like the wall thickness here, is it too thick? Is it not thick enough? Where's the perceived value? All these different types of elements, and we go through it. Lots of different stages. See, this one's much more thin on the wall thickness, so it was slipping off a little bit too easily. So we had to thicken up that wall of the die casting. The different things like that. So the process, and then we get into tooling stages and make your mistakes early. It's a lot cheaper to make the mistakes earlier than it is after, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
once we get into tooling, we want it to be pretty dialed in to having as little revisions as possible.
Yeah. Are you trying to get a pre-manufactured version before tooling that is identical? Like doing the 3D printing and a chrome covering, these sort of things? Or are you finding whatever, I assume that might have been ABS that you were showing, the 3D
That's
printed
right.
material.
Yeah.
Moving from that to tooling is sufficient? Or are you trying to get closer to the actual materials before you move into tooling?
It depends on the item, but for sure on this one, like we can do a machine prototype. That would be very close. So, and then on other items, it's going to be a lot easier to do that. Like for example, I've got all these products next to me here, but like the Picket wall hook, right? So this is a 5-hook wall hook, the Picket. So this was
I love that.
this was obviously we could talk about the design after as well, but just with regards to prototyping and whatnot, this is going to be way easier to get the idea across of what the actual object is without you don't have to tool anything, you don't have to machine any die cast parts or anything. Like we can get this really quickly prototyped and understanding like how's it going to feel, what angles do
Yeah.
we need, all that kind of stuff, right?
And just for listeners, this Picket wall hook is, you can probably describe it better, but it goes flat against the wall and you can pull out the hooks and then hang up your coats or anything else you want to hang up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's winning about this product is it's obviously very functional, right? It's like there's no denying that has like these generous hooks on it. But when you put it against the wall, it's quite artful too,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So it has
artful
like
and flat.
yeah, it's flat,
And there's this strange functional thing that works for me because I don't like things pointing out at me. It just bothers me.
right.
And so that's brilliant. It's like the hook is there when I need it. I pull it out and cover it up with my coat or hat or anything else. And then I can push it back and it's not pointing out at me anymore. So
Yeah, we like to call it like its dormant state and its active state. And so if something can look really great in its dormant state and then be really functional and still look good in its active state, like that's a real win for us.
Yep. Yep. Okay. I want to go back to something you introduced early on, which was the values and how you think about design. So you moved over your career as this individual contributor, right, out of industrial design school, becoming an individual designer for the company, now leading design across the global organization. I imagine that it can be challenging to keep that design ethos, keep that brand image intact as new products get designed. If everything's taking place in the design studio, sounds like you may have more control about that. But no doubt you want to infuse everyone with kind of the same guiding philosophy for what does it mean to design Umbra products. Can you give us some insights about how you accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean it's been a process and it's a very interesting conversation to understand, first of all, what is the Umbra DNA of design? I think it does have a look with regards to its materiality, its shapes, forms. So a lot of the external contributors that we work with, they understand that, and we get approached more by people who are like-minded, for example, right? So they're probably already in a similar space, and they feel that their product that they want to present to Umbra is going to be a match or close to a match. Of course, there are exceptions where, let's say, if there's like an incredible idea and the functionality is incredible. Actually, there's an example of this from a student design that we worked with probably 5 years ago at the Umbra College in Toronto. We did a student collaboration, 20 students submitting designs. And this young student had an idea for a bottle opener, right? And it was good. Like, it was pretty interesting. It had a lot of the things that we look for. Like, it was catchy and it had movement. And I have the final version here, which I'll show you in a second. And it was a conversation piece. It was a bottle opener that didn't want to live in the drawer. Umbra items, like, we like to live
Right.
outside the drawer. We like to create conversation. We like to have a relationship with the owners, right? That's where we have our success. So this designer created something that was conceptually very good, but aesthetically not part of our design language. And so we were able to work with the designer and actually, like, internally massage that. So we have a design massage team here who can take a core idea and massage it into what we think is going to be impactful for our brand and our consumer, but still retain all of the integrity of the core idea, right? So that item is the Tipsy bottle opener. So it's a die cast chrome piece, right? And it has two parts. So it has a base, and then it has this top form, and the top form is actually in the shape of a bird. And you take it off, and the beak lands directly on top of this conical shape, which is the base. So it free spins. I'm sure people have bought this item and they don't even know it's a bottle opener. They love the form, like the reflectivity, like the giftability of it. It's amazing, just like sitting on a counter, right? But it also acts as a functioning bottle opener too, right? So this is like a great example of something that came in, wasn't exactly our design aesthetic, but we knew there was something there. We knew that there was like something really of interest that had this balance of form and function. And we worked with the collaborator to really like make it work, right? So that's the Tipsy bottle opener story. So
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So this has been, and obviously like the designer has been like receiving royalties on this as part of our collaborative experience with external designers. So it's been great.
That was a good student project to be a part of,
Yeah.
to make that contribution. Yeah, so it sounds like you've just, for anyone that is trying to instill a design philosophy, a design ethos in an organization, to sit down and think through what values are really part of our design, right? So you listed some in our beginning of our conversation. You added to this as things that are meant to maybe produce a conversation, be a piece you talk about, not just live in a drawer, and at the right price point. You want them to be approachable for consumers for this brand. So just to really clarify what the design principles are. And now, thankfully, you also make it easy for designers to get in touch with what that is because they can see it as well, because you have so many products available with the long history there of Umbra.
That's right.
But it helps keep everyone on the same page.
Yeah, and of course, sometimes we want to be challenged too, right? Like if it's going to be uncomfortable, that's great, and we just have to, again, like we have to manage those expectations on something that has a little bit more risk in a way. If it is a brand new idea, we got to be open to these new ideas, and most great ideas are not palatable at the start, right? So
Very good.
yeah.
Matt, I appreciate all the information on design and how you lead design and instill that, the design philosophy and specific elements to think about what makes a beautiful design for Umbra and how others can think about what makes a good design for them. We do like innovation quotes, and this is another way to convey meaning and wisdom. What was the quote you brought us, and what does it mean?
So the quote I like to think about, not only just in design, but in life in general, is your last impression is your lasting impression. And I like it. I even use it with my kids. It's their last day of school today. So like the first impression is great, but it's really what you're remembered by that people will remember. And that goes hand in hand with product as well, right? So the last impression that you have with a brand or with an individual product is going to be like that lasting impression that you have. And if you're going to tell your friends about a great product experience that you had or a terrible product experience that you had, right, it's really impactful. So it's important that the quality of whether it's conversation with another human or the quality of materials of a product, they all really stand really have a long-term perspective on things. even celebrating our 45th anniversary here, we have products that have been in the collection for 2 or 3 decades, right? So
Wow.
I really think that speaks to that lasting impression and the quality of design and really what we stand for here at Umbra.
Fantastic. Making a lasting impression. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your last impression is your lasting impression. It's a good quote, good twist on
Yeah.
that notion. So
Yeah.
fantastic. How can people find out about Umbra, about the work you do, more about you?
Well, definitely they can visit us at umbra.com. That is our main platform. But also we have an Instagram account, umbra_design. And we also have a TikTok account as well. But really, like our whole collection of catalog goods is at umbra.com, and you can find more about the design process, what we're up to, who we work with, who we collaborate with. It's really a nice story to understand our core values here at Umbra.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. We'll make sure the links are available to everyone in our written version of this as well. I do just want to follow up on the TikTok. I'm curious, I did not discover your TikTok channel in preparing for this. How are you guys using that for positioning the brand for marketing? Are you going with the really catchy TikTok sort of video vibe or doing something different?
Yeah, there is some of that for sure. So certain products lend to that more than others, but it's important that we get visibility. And some of our items actually do have like the Tipsy bottle opener, for example. That is like a great like TikTok type item, right?
Yep.
So there's a conversation there. There's an element of play. There's like a stickiness to the overall video. So that kind of item, or we have like a ring holder that really did well on TikTok, is in the shape of a dog kind of thing, and there's a lot of play there. So there's all these types of things like this. I have a helpful hand here beside me, but this is a ring holder as well, right? This was massive on TikTok.
It looks like a dachshund in Chrome.
It is. And so actually we were speaking earlier on about how quickly we can get to consumers and evolve products. So when we put this out, the audience from TikTok was screaming like, okay, we need a brass one, or I want a cat. So we also did a cat version shortly after and got that into production very quickly, right? So the TikTok is not only great for brand visibility, but it's extremely important for us for speed to market.
Yeah. Again, build that community, get feedback from customers. That's fantastic. Okay. Thanks for letting me follow up on that. Really interesting. And once again, thanks for the great discussion on design and design values and how to help us think about designing in a specific kind of philosophy into the products that we make. Appreciate your time today, Matt.
Thank you so much, Chad. Have a great day.
And for listeners, if you do want the written version of everything we discussed, simply go to productmasterynow.com/557. Also, we do include discussion questions in that guide. That is because there are many product teams that occasionally will select an episode of this discussion and use it for their kind of lunch and learn meetings to dive deeper into concepts. And we provide those discussion questions to help you think about the things that Matt just shared with us. So take advantage of that when it helps you out. Once again, that guide is at productmasterynow.com/557. As always, everyone, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.